The movie The Platform 2, people enter the mysterious pit. They wake up on a different level each month, sharing food from a moving platform. Perempuan, an artist haunted by guilt, and Zamiatan, a man driven mad by his past, must navigate this harsh reality. As tensions rise between followers of strict rules and rebels seeking freedom, survival becomes even more dangerous. Will they find a way out? At the start of the movie, different people were shown signing up to join the Vertical Self-Management Center, also known as the Pit. During the interview process, they shared who they were and the guilt that brought them there. Some were forced to join, while others came on their own. Among these people were Perempuan and Zamiatan, who became floormates. Each had a personal reason for joining the pit. Perempuan felt guilty for the death of a child. Outside, she was a famous artist known for her sculptures that showed violent animal behavior. Sadly, the boy fell into one of her sculptures, which injured his eye and killed him. Perempuan knew her sculptures were dangerous but didn't take precautions, so she felt responsible for the boy's death. She said that the one thing she wanted was time to forgive herself. Zamiatan's background was less clear. In his interview, he said his parents sent him to the pit to learn discipline. In recent years, he had lost his job, his family, and nearly his mind. He had almost set his parents' house on fire while they were sleeping. Zamiatan called himself a man of science and was dedicated to pure mathematics. However, when he encountered the question of the square root of -1, it drove him to madness. He would write this equation on the walls repeatedly. The square root of -1 was originally called an imaginary number because it didn't seem to exist in the real world. Zamiatan concluded that if people accepted something that didn't fit with reality, then mathematics and everything else couldn't be trusted. Before entering the pit, each person selected one dish they were willing to eat every day and one item to keep with them. Zamiatan chose pizza, but on the first day in the cell, someone from the floor above ate his pizza. When Zamiatan tried to take other food, the neighbors above stopped him, telling him it wasn't allowed. He could only eat his own dish or trade with someone else. The pit structure was upheld by the law, which divided the people into two groups. The first group was the loyalists, who followed the law and the rules of the master. They believed in order, even if it meant losing freedom. The second group was the barbarians, who rejected the law and believed in freedom, even if it meant losing order. Zamiatan, however, decided to take someone else's food, but his neighbor stopped him, reminding him that he was fortunate to wake up on level 24 this month. He warned Zamiatan that next month he might end up at the bottom. As the platform moved down, the two floormates introduced themselves, knowing they had to share the cell despite the tension. One day, chaos erupted when it was discovered that the food chain was broken at level 44. Zamiatan learned that there were 333 levels in total. He was informed that the next day, the loyalists from levels 19 and 20 would come down to level 21 to protect his pizza, while the people from levels 42 and 43 would check level 4. That's how the system worked. The following day, loud noises of a fight came from above. There was a serious conflict on level 21. Suddenly, the platform began to move, and the loyalist neighbors from above warned Zamiatan that if they couldn't handle the barbarians, he would have to fight them himself. Zamiatan begged the people above to take his pizza and leave him alone. However, as the platform descended, the body of a barbarian lay among the food. Then, the burning corpse of the neighbor from above fell down. Perempuan quickly covered the burning body with a blanket, while the second neighbor regained consciousness and attacked the barbarian, who fought back. Eventually, the fight ended, with the barbarian knocked unconscious, but everyone was still hungry. The neighbor from above, realizing his burned friend had died, said they needed to go down and find the anointed ones. These anointed were the people lucky enough to have met the master, who had survived for a month without food on one of the lower levels. But when he reached the very bottom, where food could no longer reach, he cut flesh from his own thigh to feed those in need. His followers, the anointed, spread his teachings about fair food distribution. The next day, they woke up on level 180, but the food chain had broken at level 169, and no one knew what had happened. Zamiatan hoped the loyalists would restore order. Suddenly, a voice from below told him that the law was above, as he hadn't eaten anything for 25 days while on level 165. This terrified Zamiatan. Perempuan reassured him that they survived because they respected the law, but the man reminded her that was back on level 24. For the next several days, the platform came down empty. Zamiatan soon began considering leaving voluntarily, while Perempuan marked the days on the wall. One day, a head fell from above, and everyone saw it as a sign that the anointed were eliminating barbarians. Zamiatin felt worse and worse, even though his neighbor kept saying the law was above all and would relieve suffering. Perempuan cared for him, even though she was losing strength as well. More heads kept falling and Zamiatin grew weaker. News arrived that communication was only lost with levels 68 and 69, and that order would soon be restored. However, the anointed who led the resistance urged everyone to hold on and find the lame man and the cross-eyed woman who had overindulged on level 176 last month. Perempuan realized they were referring to Zamiatin and tricked the others by naming a different level. Zamiatin insisted on following the law, even though he knew he wouldn't survive much longer. He remembered that his family thought of him as undisciplined and selfish, and now he felt he had broken the law again. Ready to leave, he said goodbye and asked Perempuan to visit his children after her release and ask for their forgiveness on his behalf. Then he set himself on fire and threw himself down, leaving the lighter for his neighbor. The next day, Perempuan woke up on level 51 with a new cellmate, a woman. The people living above reported that everything was going well and there were no barbarians. Perempuan realized her new cellmate was a newcomer and explained the survival rules to her. When the platform descended, her cellmate's dish was already gone. Perempuan told her she could only eat the next day. Later, it was revealed that the barbarian lived on level 54. Last month, he had lived on level 2 and ate as much as he could. Perempuan was ready to help punish him, but she was reminded of the rule that only those directly next to the barbarian's level could fight him first. She told her new neighbor about Zamiatin's death and shared her belief that the higher the level, the greater the responsibility. Otherwise, those below would suffer. In the morning, the prison woke to screams, as the notorious anointed had taken action and wouldn't spare the guilty. When the platform descended, Perempuan's cellmate grabbed a bed leg and suggested they punish the barbarian. Perempuan immediately agreed. They descended to the next level, where their neighbors were angry about the rule breaking. But one man understood their determination. He sent his neighbor with them while he stayed to maintain communication. When they reached level 54, they immediately started fighting, as the barbarian refused to surrender. Perempuan's cellmate got injured, and the woman struck the barbarian with the bed leg, while his neighbor, a boy with a weak mind, watched. The man begged Perempuan to let him go, saying he only wanted to survive. She hesitated for a moment, and the platform immediately descended, taking the barbarian with it. Perempuan's cellmate screamed, demanding that he not be let go, revealing she wasn't a newcomer. Later, the woman admitted she had been in the pit for 6 months. She believed the law was unfair because it protected the food they brought in. She and her first cellmate always followed the law, but one day, they found a starving boy and fed him with food left by a dead person. Then the anointed came. Her partner resisted and managed to gouge out one of the anointed's eyes. The woman was tied to the platform and sent to a lower level, where she was eaten alive. She said no one escaped alive unless they did so during the interval. At the end of each month, prison guards used gas to put people to sleep, which was the only chance to descend. When the appointed day arrived, Perempuan suggested they take the feeble-minded boy with them, but then the platform descended with the anointed ones. They gathered everyone who had helped subdue the barbarian and thanked the fearless women who had volunteered to help. For this, they were offered food and wine, but as soon as they started eating, they were seized because the rules were unbreakable. The anointed announced a harsh punishment for those who allowed the women to participate, saying Perempuan and her friend would have their hands cut off. The woman protested, saying the protector of the law shouldn't be punished. But the anointed reminded her that the law couldn't be broken, even in its defense. He said fear was the only thing keeping the barbarians in check. Then, the boy, who had seemed feeble-minded, suddenly revealed the women's plan to escape. Both women were tied up and lost one of their hands. Perempuan woke up on level 72 next to an elderly man. She advised him not to speak to anyone above or below. He admitted he had been on level 203 and his allowed item was a knife. The girl asked to borrow it. She remembered her friend's words that they needed to descend. The two ate well despite the protests of those above and descended to the next level, where Perempuan suggested uniting against the loyalists. Their lower neighbors eagerly agreed. Further down, people tried to defend the law, but Perempuan's supporters reminded them that no one had the right to decide for everyone. If they didn't want to be punished by the anointed, they had to unite, for people were born free and shouldn't obey the loyalists. Those who refused were killed, and the rest joined Perempuan. More people continued descending until they chose a level where they would wait for the loyalists. Among her followers, Perempuan saw the barbarian she had let go, the one responsible for her losing her hand. But she remained silent. In the evening, people relaxed, ate the remaining food, and sang. In the morning, they heard the platform descending, but it turned out to be empty. The blind anointed from above announced that there would be no more food, and once they starved and weakened, the loyalists would kill them. He offered mercy if they handed over the leaders of the rebellion. This caused dissent among the rebels, but then they remembered the anointed people sitting below, realizing they could simply eat them. As Perempuan looked at those around her, she recalled how, after years of hard work, she had organized an exhibition of her sculptures, but her boyfriend's son had died after stumbling on one of them, and a bloody fight broke out. As almost everyone died, Perempuan saw the blind anointed who asked her to finish what she had started. Instead, she offered to heal him and feed him his own flesh, saying only then would he be worthy of his master. She needed time to forgive herself, so she left. Perempuan called her neighbor, but he refused, saying it had been the best month of his life. But they were prisoners of themselves. Determined to escape, the woman stuffed pieces of cloth into her nose to avoid inhaling the sleep-inducing gas. Meanwhile, on level 333, among the children living there, one boy was chosen. Perempuan pretended to be dead, hoping the cleaners would take her to the top level, from where she could escape. She was loaded onto the platform, which descended to the very bottom. There she saw the guards laying a child on a pile of corpses. She reminded herself she had to escape, but her conscience didn't allow her to leave the child behind. Perempuan tried to reach his bed, but she hit her head, which proved fatal for her. She found herself in the afterlife, where children acted as guides for the souls of the deceased, helping them reach their final destination. She had the choice to either leave or save the child. Perempuan decided to stay, surrounded by the souls of her comrades who had died before her. The movie ended with her seeing the master and his anointed ones.